So here's the thing. I have always been incredibly passionate about business and all things African. Prior to university, I had the opportunity of working in the government parastatal where I had the immense pleasure of witnessing firsthand the huge impact that effective leaders can bring and how they spearhead the positive changes we want to see in our societies. I believe that one of the first steps to being an effective leader and an agent of positive change is having a strong belief that I can. And this podcast is simple. Every fortnight on a Wednesday, I will be sharing with you insights from business leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, and even government officials. Essentially, people from different walks of life. Simply put, I will be speaking with agents of positive change who have and are currently working hard to build the future of Africa. On this first episode, I had the immense pleasure of speaking with Isabelle Ugochukwu, the founder, the brain, the belle of the cerebellum behind iCAN. She is a superwoman in every sense in my books, a purpose-driven woman. She excelled in her corporate career to become the chief of staff at Maersk before making the move to being an entrepreneur. She is currently the founder and CEO of the health tech startup called MedTech Solutions, where she leads a visionary team that is committed to reshaping the manner in which healthcare is delivered. As this is our first episode, listeners, please bear with us as we had some technical issues, but I promise you that our quality of our podcasts will only get better from here on out. Now, on to episode number 1. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoy speaking with Isabelle. Hi, Isabelle. It's lovely to have you on the iCAN podcast. Thank you for giving us your time, giving me your time to speak to me about iCAN, the iCAN podcast, and what we're looking to achieve within iCAN. I don't want to, do too much with telling the audience as to what you do. So I'll let you give that over to you. So, just give us a quick introduction as to what you are currently doing, what you're currently in, and then have that lovely conversation that we are here to have today.
So I am the founder and CEO of MedTech Solutions Global, MTS Global for short, and we are a B2B health tech impact startup launching on the African continent in Q1 2025. So I'm an entrepreneur, accidental entrepreneur, I call myself, very unplanned career path. Previously, having been a senior executive for a number of years, having spent all my career prior in corporate, I am happily married to the love of my life, best man I've ever known, and we have 2 children together, um, who I wear around my neck.
Oh, that's
Um,
lovely.
I wear them in my heart and I wear them around my neck. So yes, they are 4 and 2, and so I'm a CEO, wife, mother, and the head of.
That is amazing. I mean, first of all, when we think, can women have it all? I'm actually starting to think we can. So,
You know, I asked my mother that same question when I was 19 years old and I was just exhausted of exams. And I'll
mm,
never forget what she said to me. She was like, "You can have whatever you want, but
mm.
you'll just have a lot less sleep."
So how are you faring in the sleep department?
It's to be fair, it's better now that I don't have my executive MBA anymore and I don't have a newborn anymore. So our kids sleep well. 8 p.m. they're in bed. Nobody disturbs us till 7 o'clock in the morning. So, we have a good routine and, they love to sleep. So that does help. So yes, now it's much better. I have to say, we will generally get 3 or 4 hours of our own time, couple time before we sleep. And by and large, most days I try and get 7 hours or 6 to 7 hours so that I can, function because everything I do is high performing, high functioning, and I do really need sleep. Weekends are not really an opportunity to catch up because anyone with young children know that they're an alarm clock. And once you're set, you're set. So 7 a.m. Sunday, 7 a.m. Saturday, you are up. And the benefits is that your days, you can pack a lot into the day. But then generally by 10, 11 p.m. I start to get towards 0% battery and I need to lay my head down. And also, I mean, my husband says he envies me. He's like, I get in bed and 10 seconds later I'm gone.
I'm envious of you as well. I'm so envious.
I even think some days I take 10 seconds to fall asleep because I'm just on the go all the time.
Mm.
That when I could sleep in a car, I could sleep on a train, I could sleep anywhere. Just give me 15 minutes.
Oh, I'm so envious of people like you because I also have my brother very much the same, just fall asleep anywhere. And I can't fall asleep in the car. I literally once anything's moving, I even struggle to fall asleep on the plane. And I think to myself, why? I have to be
Oh,
so tired.
wow.
I have to be, I mean, so tired for me to fall asleep comfortably. But I really do envy. I very much envy
To be
you.
fair, I think it's probably that, and I do have sleep debt if I'm honest.
Mm.
When I was doing the executive MBA and I was running a global business, and I mean I started my executive MBA 3 weeks after I gave birth to my son, and I was nursing during the night. I have sleep debt.
So how many hours on average do you believe like you need to feel your most effective during the day?
I think 7
Okay, so
to 8. I'll just wake up on my own, like and even when I'm sick, if I'll go to bed at like 10, 11, I'll still wake up at 6 or 7. So I'm not a huge sleeper. I've never been. But I think anything short of 6 and then it starts to build up, you make do, you compensate, but I don't feel refreshed or at full capacity. And I like to feel at full capacity because everything that I do, all my roles, I lead. So I need to have the ability to think, to reason, to be able to come to quick decision making. And you'd be surprised how much of sleep and eating well, nourishing your body well, drinking lots of water, making sure you get vitamins, all of that, those things. When I was younger, I didn't really think about it, but now I make sure that I do all of those things so that my days can be as productive as possible, and I can look back and think, okay, I've done the best I could with today.
this is very valid because a lot of times when people say being a high performing, high functioning professional, there's always that case of them making it seem like, oh, you just have to like give up something or just lack somewhere. But it's very important to hear you say that prioritizing your health, sleep, diet, exercise, just what's the input into our bodies affects the output.
Yes. I mean, garbage in, garbage out,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, look, let me kind of offer up a more, because I don't want people to be listening to think, oh, she's got it all. No, I am woefully under-exercised, okay? I really want to make more time for that. But
Mm.
again, it's, with all my competing priorities, especially my husband and the children, it's very difficult to say, okay, do I now go for a 5K run or go to the gym, or do I take the time to make a really nice dinner and like crack out the jazz music and a bottle of wine and enjoy some quality time? And you're always making those trade-offs. If you pour into yourself, is that an opportunity that you could have poured into your relationship or your children? If you work, if it's is it, oh, do I work late to push us over the deadline? Or so I think for me, work life harmony looks very different to other people's. So um, I will often do the school run. And I'm in the CET time zone, which is an hour ahead of the UK. So I'll be at my desk at the equivalent of 8 a.m. UK time, or UTC, and so that's quite early. And then I will generally have a bit of a break around the dinner time. And then some evenings I will work. I will work later. And then on Saturday afternoons and on Sunday afternoons, it's not uncommon for me to work. But then what trade-offs is that then during the week, I can take my daughter to speech therapy,
Yes.
because it's no secret that I have a daughter who's autistic, and so she goes to speech therapy, she goes to psychomotor therapy, and I kind of want to be involved in that and not miss those moments. I want to do the school run. I want to see how things are going. And so for every leading woman, it's going to
Yeah.
look very different depending on what their circumstances are. And I often kind of say, I'm married to the best man I know, but that's really not a joke. I think that your support network is literally just such an important part of who you are when you're a woman leader, because you can only achieve as much as you have the support to be able to achieve, and to be in a relationship with someone that's just like, what, I got this. Go to your business trip for 9 days. Don't worry about the kids. It's all under control. And for me to get on a plane and go to Ghana or go to wherever I need to, and not think for a minute, oh, is someone getting the medication right? Is someone getting the school run right? Are they dressed warm enough? Are they this? Are they, just to be completely like chill about it and
Yes.
think, and just be really released to be able to just fly and thrive. And I have to say that I owe that almost completely to my husband, to be able to do that, so that I don't ever worry about our children. And that's something that's really rare and special, and I'm grateful for that.
Honestly, what you said, for me, it's one thing I love to hear, when women leaders have the right support that they need to actually not just get by, but actually thrive and actually flourish and be as successful as they can be, and work to be. And one thing you said that I really liked was, you didn't use the word balance for work life. You said harmony, because a lot of times I've heard people use the word balance as almost it comes this balancing act of,
Mm-hmm.
the cup's not full here, the other one's not full there. But
Mm-hmm.
realizing that using harmony is such an important word to use. And I
Mm-hmm.
think just because anyone who you realize that everything feeds into the other. So you pouring into your relationship cup at a point in time, even if it's you not pouring as much into exercising, it's still very much harmonizing the
Mm-hmm.
balance in your life.
Yes.
um and it doesn't mean that you start feeling bad that you're not working out or something.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, it's still very much creating that lovely harmony that you want for yourself. Like you said, also one thing I appreciate is that you're also having a child autistic, who has autism. And it's one of those things that I can imagine the amount of love and care you have to put into ensuring that not just your child that has autism, but your second child as well. So because I have an in-law who has a child who has autism as well. And from talking to people who have kids with autism, it's so important to also ensure that both the child with autism and the other siblings,
Yes.
no one feels left out. No one feels like
Yes.
one child is getting more attention than the other. So I imagine that it's really, honestly, well done with all that you're
Thank you.
balancing,
I mean,
and
to
all
be
that you're
honest, they're
harmonizing.
completely different. They are
Yeah.
complete. I mean, they don't look alike. I know our daughter looks like her dad. Our son looks like me. You put them next to each other, they don't look like brother and sister. They don't look like they come from the same parents. And their characters are just totally, completely different. It's just magic. Genetics is a wonderful thing. But I mean, she's brilliant, and I think one of the biggest blessings about her neurodivergence,
Yes.
is that it's teaching us how to think things through differently. And I think also kind of learning to be a positive advocate of how to parent neurodivergent children, especially having come from the African kind of community, Africans in diaspora, where it's something that's often taboo and not really spoken about. And actually be a real advocate for early intervention, because our daughter has made enormous progress because we intervened before she was 2 years old. And so Now she's thriving and she's, she's a wonderful little girl. And her brother has enough energy to make me feel old, but he's always breaking something or the other, and he's just like, honestly, I can't wait till he goes to school so he can go and break something over there. But they're both delightful, and honestly, it was a huge dream of mine to be a mother, and it's just fulfilling beyond words can express. I remember my friends who had children always say before I had mine that it's like a piece of a piece of your heart is running around outside of your body, and honestly, they just bring me so much joy and fulfillment, and to be able to serve their needs and love them by loving them the way that they like to receive love. It's such an honor, because I came from a nuclear, family, and my father was there, my mom was there, and I was really loved on as a child. And so I consider it a huge privilege that I grew up in a home like that. And now I consider it my honor and duty to pass that same privilege on to our children, and to see them so well adjusted everywhere we go. People are like, oh my god, your kids are so well behaved. And it's not because that's beaten into them, it's because that's loved into them. When children feel secure, they flourish. And so that's a huge part of my life, and I'm just so grateful to God that I'm able to be a mother.
Honestly, I was just use the word I'm lost for words, because I love to see women achieve every part. So entrepreneur, you're killing it there. Motherhood, killing. For me, I know that no one's perfect, don't worry, but I'm still very much that person. I will give my flowers. I will give flowers.
Thank you.
So for me, I just love to see. And it's the fact that from what I know of you, from speaking, you carry the same amount of passion, energy, joy into every aspect of your life. And it's something that I believe is such a key part of your success. I mean,
Thank
I'm
you.
just, from my own, it's being able to be
I'm a very
passionate.
passionate person. I am a very passionate person, and
So,
I think it's important to treat people the way you want to be treated, right? So,
yes. So definitely, and it's something that I love to see whenever I meet people who are truly passionate about life, personal life, work life. It's just so beautiful to see, because life comes with its ups and downs, but it's really how we approach those ups and downs that makes
so
it very much exactly. It makes it like whether or not we are defeated by it, or the energy we walk around with, which then leads me into more career, conversations. So I know that prior to INSEAD, prior to iCAN, prior to all of this, just how was it? What was your journey to, INSEAD? How did that go for you?
so I grew up very good at problem solving and being a bossy child, aka displaying leadership skills that were unbridled. And I used to draw floor plans for my sleepovers and force my friends to assume the correct position. Um, and it came like filled with menus that took into consideration everyone's allergies. I mean, I was just now. I look back and I think to myself, bloody hell, you were brilliant, but way before your time. But I was the youngest, and my siblings were kind of older, and so I grew up around much older people, and so I matured really quickly. But mainstream school had me being good at science and maths because that's the only place that my logic showed. And so, it was a kind of whole, well, you can be a vet, or you can be what was it, a dentist, or you can be a doctor. Well, I was having loads of tooth work done or dental work, and I was just like, never in my life would I ever do that to anybody. So that was out. And then I tried work experience at the vet, and I came home, I think after the third day, I was like, nope, done. And I watched animals being put down every day. And that's
Oh
when I
no.
became absolutely, completely against euthanasia of any sort because it just traumatized me. And I thought, nope, not doing that either. And so, the kind of path was, well, you're going to basically be a doctor. And turns out I was like, nah, not that either. So I ended up doing a science degree to kind of get out of becoming a doctor. And then I was like, okay, I want to do something kind of commercial related, but nobody in my family was business or commercial minded or anything like that. Anyway, so I did internships, and the university I went to, the University of Glasgow, were fantastic. They had a internship hub, and I managed to get the internships, and I did that every year. That led me to a master's in international project management, where I just excelled. And that's when I realized through that and internships that I was very good with people, stakeholder management, and I was exceptional at making things happen, doing. And that I could get anybody to do almost anything. So, kind of studying the proper frameworks within which to do that, in international project management. And I got my master's, and then I went into work doing that as a grad. Then I worked my way up, graduate project manager, then senior project manager, then program manager, and along the lines got my qualifications. Then started working as a portfolio manager. I went from IT. I started in IT, and then I went commercial, and then, at that point, I became a senior executive, and I only knew my own vertical, and I was working with people from across different aspects of business, and I wanted to know more. So eyed up which business school would be the one for me. And I'm a mixture of several different nationalities. And so I had to find a place that was in Europe, would give me that global footprint, was, like creme de la creme, like elite business school, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was all roads lead to INSEAD. And so I prepared for 5 years to apply, because that's generally how I am. I'll shoot once and I'll hit the target, but I'll spend a long time preparing, or as much time as I need to preparing before, so that I don't miss. And so, I did that. I met alumni who were working in my company at the time. And I knew that I was going into the stage of life where I was now married, and I was looking to have a family, and I was self-funded, and I would have to kind of overlay maternity leave on it. So there was a lot of things that needed to be planned, and sort of a lot of swim lanes aligned, if it was kind of another program, if you will. So I spoke to a lot of people. I did my research, and then at the appropriate time, for want of a better expression, my husband and I decided, right, we'll pull the trigger, and this is now. And obviously, I then got in, and then I was supposed to start in 2020. COVID hit, and I didn't want to do it over Zoom, so I deferred. And then 2022, I started, and and then I graduated in December, gosh, almost a year ago,
Oh, sorry.
on the 15th of December. Yeah, I walked the stage in Singapore to the applause of my husband. My two children were too young to applaud, but they were there. Um, and yeah, it was life changing, actually, because I came to INSEAD to. I always say to people, I call it to get fat, right? To kind of broaden out my
Yeah.
business knowledge, because I've gotten very tall, but you know I didn't feel like I had the talk about the tree analogy. I didn't have the kind of width to sustain. And so I went to INSEAD to get that width, and then my life completely changed, and I became an entrepreneur.
So, first of all, that's an amazing journey. It's been from the science
Yes,
person, to the project person who makes things happen.
yes,
And but the thing is that from what you said, from being a child, you've always made things happen. So you
yes.
really and truly, you know, 10-year-old Isabelle knew that she was always going to be that person who makes things happen. But technically didn't have the actual. I'm just, putting that there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think because my parents were hardcore academics, okay, so they didn't know any better in that sense. They didn't know to teach me frameworks of leadership and things like that. But I
Yeah.
think now, if I was to see that in one of my children, I would know much better how
Mm.
to train, that person
Yeah.
according to their skills. But where my parents didn't have that knowledge, what they did was give me the freedom to explore the knowledge. So when I then wanted to pivot and change what I was studying, that was fine. And then when I wanted to pursue my master's, that was fine. And they gave me the skills to think critically about my life decisions, and to make good, like a bedrock and a foundation on which to make good life decisions, that still serves me to today. And I think they've always championed going after what you want and success. And I mean, they got, I don't even know how many masters between them and PhD and God knows what. So, they're always going to celebrate another qualification. So yeah, having that support has also been really wonderful. I mean, they're elderly, so they couldn't come out to Singapore, but they got up at the crack of dawn and they watched live and they were commenting on the YouTube, and it was, my friends were taking screenshots of their comments, and my WhatsApp was, going up in flames, and people were like, my goodness, it's like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and your mom's commenting on the live graduation. I'm like, this is so cute. But yeah, thanks mom, thanks dad.
I hope when they're listening to this, thank you. First of all, raising an inspirational woman that is you, Isabel, and thank you to them as well. So one thing you've mentioned that I just want to like go a bit deeper into, you said you've learned how to influence anyone to do what you need them to do. So basically get people to do what
Mhm,
needs to be done. So just quickly, what
mhm.
what's your top tip on anyone who's listening that
Yes,
wants to learn how to get
yes,
anyone to do anything?
yes.
What's the top tip?
um, I would say three things
Okay.
that can endear you to someone, and be responsible with this. If you're listening, don't abuse this, because you can abuse it and it's not good. So, as with any knowledge, you need to, like it says in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So, please use this wisely. The first thing is you need to understand what culture the person comes from. And I'm talking about ethnic culture, because that's probably the biggest driver to somebody's why and to somebody's identity. And this matters more than anybody realizes. I think more than most people realize. So where in the world do they come from?
Yes.
How are things done in that part of the world? How is communication done? Where on the kind of high to low context framework does it sit? What does that mean? What kind of social and cultural protocols are important? How are they enacted? So that's the first thing, the cultural influences. The second thing is their familial influences. In order to be able to really understand what someone's capacity is, you need to understand to a certain degree what home life looks like for them, because that massively influences what they're able to do, for how long, and the frequency. And the third thing is then to understand their own personal ambitions. What do they want? What's their North Star? And I think also I would say a fourth thing is what are their values? That's also very important. And I think that once you understand those four things, it allows you to see, okay, is this person the right person for this role or this opportunity? It could be right person, right opportunity. It may not be the right time.
Yeah.
So is it the right person for the right opportunity at the right time? And then also in that role, how do you empower them and set them up for success? Because success is largely based on those same factors and how they interact with other people in the team as well. So it's, I guess people call it emotional intelligence, or EQ. It's got lots of different names, but it's just take a step back and look at who the person is and everything that makes up who they are. And once you appreciate them
Yeah.
for their uniqueness and their individuality, and you show them appreciation, that genuine, heartfelt appreciation, people will crawl over hot coals for you. And people will know if you're not, if you're being disingenuous. But when you show someone real love, attention, and care, um, and I think this is one of the places or the things that women leaders can be very good at, not trying to be men, actually leveraging your femininity and your, and obviously this is a generalization because women are very different, but I'm a very typical feminine woman,
Yeah.
very nurturing in my nature. I'm also very hardworking. I have a spirit of excellence. I demand hard work from people who work for me, but at the same time, I nurture them, because I understand that if you nurture someone, they will return the best work, and you won't have to ask them to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that those things are how I would say you get the best work from people.
First of all, thank you. These are really, really great tips, because what you've, summarily, obviously, I don't want to repeat what you said, is pretty much understanding the core of that person and then appreciating that core, appreciating who they are, and then going ahead with that. Because, like you said, once people feel seen, heard, understood, they will reciprocate. So, first of all, so thank you. Any listener, this is a huge tip. I would definitely be applying this in my own life. And yeah. So just moving on really quickly, because going from there, you are an excellent leader by the fact that first of all, I you started iCAN.
Yes.
And I came on because I first of all was after the first time I spoke with you, I thought to myself, I mean, I just remember thinking, wow, I this is someone I actually want to work with, someone I want to learn from. This is someone I want to actually, you know, do something substantial that actually impacts people in a positive way with. So, first of all, anyone that's listening to this, she's who she thinks she is. I will say that in
Thank
all
you.
aspects. And so, just going on from there, what made you after INSEAD? What made you decide you want to start iCAN? You know, why? What was the inspiration behind?
I think two things mainly. When I was in, at INSEAD, obviously anybody who's been, you'll know you're kind of
Mm.
coached up to your eyeballs, right? You have career coach, personal coach, this coach, that coach, and you go there thinking you're getting just an education, and they just change your whole life. And I was born and raised in Nigeria. I don't sound like it. I do speak Igbo fluently, for everybody who's questioning. And I've kept my maiden name as my professional name, but I'm married to a Yoruba man who speaks Yoruba fluently also. And my mother's French, but my mum met my dad in France, went back to Nigeria with him, got married, lived 25 years in Nigeria. She learned to read, write, and speak Igbo fluently, and actually was the person who wrote the first ever Igbo to French dictionary, for which she received the equivalent of a knighthood from the French government for her contributions to academia and literature. So, but when we came to the UK and I was 10 years old, I think, as a kind of biracial person, I had never questioned what my ethnicity was. Actually, when I was surrounded by Black Nigerians in Nigeria, I was just, I was me, and I didn't have to be half this or half that or this or that percentage. And when I came to the UK, I was very quickly made to choose camps, and I really struggled with that and the sort of racial segregation, if for being honest, exists in the UK a lot. May not be as bad as or as more pronounced as the USA, but it's still very prevalent. And I was always made to feel like I had to choose the black side or the white side, and I was never really, no one ever really held space for me to be me, except for the white people. And with my black friends, it was always, blah 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 blah, kind of really inflammatory conversations about white people, which made me feel very uncomfortable because my mother was white. She's one of seven. I have God knows how many cousins on my French side, aunties and uncles galore, and we're very close to them. So I didn't understand whether to choose, and so naturally I drifted away. Being a fish that swims against the flow, if you say to me choose the black side, I'll be like, you know what? No, I'm going to the other side, because they're the ones not asking me to choose. They
Mm.
just, my white friends would come to our house and eat rice and stew and jollof rice and plantain,
Yes.
and then French pancakes for dessert. I was just free, and I had a very negative experience of that after I came to the UK. And so I kind of closed that door until I got to INSEAD, and through the coaching started exploring, okay, what are my values and what's my identity? And that's when I had kind of the first of the two parts that I mentioned, where I realized that just, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because you had a negative experience, it doesn't mean that you close that door. There's a huge part of your identity that is Nigerian. And, that's why I married a Nigerian, man of Nigerian heritage. And so it's okay to open the door again. But I had to heal from that misrepresentation, if you will.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of took the time to heal from that, I was able to open the door and rediscover the most beautiful Africanness that there is.
Yeah.
And that actually there are loads of people that weren't forcing me to choose like I when I was a teenager, because now the world is a much smaller place, and there's it's kind of normal to be multiracial African, and so that was the first thing. And then obviously then I joined the INSEAD African alumni WhatsApp group. And then the second thing was on my birthday, which is the 7th of October, unfortunately, the war in the Middle East broke out. Um, and that crushed me. I mean, I, I never really understood why I was so devastated because I was not directly affected, but it wore really heavily on me for a while. And obviously, there were discussions around that. And then, some people then said, we appreciate that people want to have this discussion and it's great to be able to have open discourse. However, what about my country in Africa? There's war there. What about my country in Africa? There's still the fallout of war. What are we doing to kind of talk about building the future of Africa? And to me, that was like a whistle to a dog, right? I couldn't contain. I think because I had the frustration
Yeah.
of the disquiet that my soul was feeling about everything that had happened, and then I also had this sort of renewed sense of connection with my identity, the African part of my identity. And then someone said, "What are we doing about something?" And because I'm a doer, and
Yeah.
all of those things came together in that moment, I then sent the message and said, "You know what? This is a fair point. In all the time that this group has existed, there are God knows how many hundreds of us in this group. What have people done
Yeah.
as a Pan African initiative? Because we are extremely well networked people.
Yeah.
We have a huge, combined wealth. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We are some of the top, especially those of us who live on the continent, probably in the top 0.5, if not 0.1% of earners on the continent. So, and we have intellectual capital that if we all brought this together, imagine what we could achieve. And so when I then kind of said, you know what? Why don't we just have a conversation about this if you want to have a conversation like this message? And that's when it went crazy. And so, over 100 people liked the message. And then I followed up with everyone individually. I said, you like the message. I'm going to set up a meeting. Are you sure you want to turn up and talk about this? Because one thing you're going to know about me is that I'm not going to stop at talk. The first conversation is the door that opens to action. So you need to be sure that you're coming on board. So I know that you're probably busy. You got this, you got that. And I'm not asking for, a lot of commitment because we're all senior executives leading organizations, leading business units and stuff. So, but this is what my plans were. And, these are the kind of rough areas that we need to discuss and, bring synergies together. And so that's how the whole thing was born. And it's just been wonderful because it's connected me to some of the most incredible people, some of whom I count as very, very dear friends now. And it's funny because Tabo, who's also in the leadership team, we've never met in real life. And yet, the amount of hours that we've spent speaking to each other face to face, you know, is probably more than I spend with my real life friends, if you will. I don't, but it's been brilliant because it's this thing of ours. We have this passion for building the future of Africa. We have the tenacity to actually persist with the action because it's not one thing to start something. I know how many initiatives have been started and then fizzled out. I am not a fizzle out person. If I'm going to start something that I've thought it out before and I'm going to do it for the long haul. So that's kind of how iCAN was born. And obviously the name was chosen because, and the little I, because I myself am smaller than the network, right? So it's a Change African network. And, obviously the I stands simultaneously for I as a person for each one of us and also for INSEAD, the school, because we're all INSEAD alumni.
Yes. What you've said is just, I mean, anyone who's listening, I had goosebumps at the point in time because I thought, first of all, the fact that you came from excellence. So you mentioned your mom as well, the background you had. I imagine the experience you had when you moved to the UK. I think that's such a common experience for a lot of us who grew up in Africa. So obviously yours being different because of your mixed race background. But I always joke to people that I did not know I was black until I moved to the UK at
Yes,
19.
exactly that.
I was not aware of that. I just existed as a Nigeria. I just existed as a Yoruba girl because it's tribe, but I wasn't that tied to it. I mean, I speak Yoruba fluently and all that, but I remember the first time because I moved to I'm just, a bit of my
Mhm.
own background, is I moved to the UK at 19 to start university. And I remember the first time I was given one of those forms to fill, and they put like
Yeah, your
racial
ethnicity.
and ethnicity, and there's just so many options, and I thought Black African, Black, and I kept
Yes.
thinking,
Black
wait, what's the difference
Caribbean.
between Black and Black African? And then I remember just ticking Black at first, and then next form I just ticked Black African. I just kept ticking random ones for the fun of it, right? And I just kept thinking, I mean, why am I being asked this? Like, what? Why am I having to? Like, I don't know what this is meant to mean. I'm just me. And I
Mhm.
remember also, there's a lot of identity questioning that I think for me at 19, thankfully, I guess I was exposed to a bit more. I would always say Chimamanda. So in my first
Mhm.
year of uni, I watched a particular TED talk that Chimamanda gave. And
Mhm.
it really impacted me because I remember thinking for a very long time, feeling a bit awkward because I had my Nigerian accent and I kept
Mhm.
thinking, oh, I sound a bit different. And I remember a black girl, the only other black girl that was in my course, by the way, was the one who made fun of my accents. Everyone else,
Oh
the other white
wow.
people were perfectly fine. And I remember thinking, okay, like good for you that you were here, like from when you were two, like you have a British accent, I don't. Right. And I remember it made me feel quite self-conscious because I remember questioning so much about myself and then wondering, wait, why is it coming from another black person putting me?
Yes.
Um
Yes.
and
This is a
so
whole other podcast. We black people need to do better. We
exactly,
really, really do. I think we don't support each other enough. We really
exactly,
don't. And I think when you look at other ethnicities, they do a much better job of that.
exactly.
But you know what? Each one change one. I think that,
Yeah,
it's that these conversations are important
yeah,
because at least you know the power of you're not alone. And if
exactly.
I change my behavior and I raise children who don't do that, and you change your behavior and we all raise communities that don't do that,
Exactly.
then there is hope that change will come.
And that is a very poignant statement you've made because I remember back in university as well, I just took a stance after seeing someone like Chimamanda just being herself and thinking, you know what? I'm just going to just do me and just figure out how it goes. And the power of just at least that representation of some sort, like we ourselves, like you said, do be the change you want to see as well. Because you never know who's actually watching the African network we have and using that to actually build the future of Africa.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that that's what you're hoping to achieve through iCAN. But, is there anything even like further from there you're looking to achieve, or have I summarized that? Is there anything like outside of just that
I
collective?
think changing people's
Mm,
mindset, and I'm going to be courageous and say this out loud.
yes,
Black people do not support
I
one
agree.
another enough. Okay. Now, if you look at, and we don't tend to focus on what unites us more than we focus on what divides us. You know, the minute you see another Nigerian,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, are you Igbo? Are you Yoruba? Are you Delta? Are you Yoruba? Are you this? Are you that? You know, and then you see another African, oh, are you Kenyan? Are you Ugandan? Are you South Africa? Are you Zimbabwe? Are you Zim? Are you Nigeria? Are you Ghana? Is it Ghana jollof rice? Nigerian
yeah,
jollof rice? And no one, credits the actual original Wolof jollof rice. All of this stuff. And actually, that statement or this, the quote, united we stand, divided we fall, has been and continues to be the the downfall of the African continent, certainly sub-Saharan Africa, because kind of the North Africa, they focus more on what
yes,
unites them from a religious perspective. And you'll see two North Africans, you're never going to say someone's like, oh, Tunisian this,
true.
Egyptian this, Moroccan this. No, it will be, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum
Yeah,
salam, and we do business. And the rest of us need to change our mindset. And for me, this is what I'm really hoping for because it's the first domino that will unleash the downstream effect or the ripple effect of that is, and this is one of the things that one of the, ICANN has mentioned in our first meeting was that actually we need to overcome regional integration issues. We need to learn to accept one another, embrace one another, appreciate one another, and focus on how we can build together rather than on all these little differences and sort of nitpicking things. And so if you look at the way that other kind of groups, continental groups help each other, and having lived in the UK for 25 years, you see this. Someone will come from a country, and then another person that they might, family friend will come. They'll be like, you know what,
Yeah.
stay in our house, we'll make space, you save your money, and then when the next house down the street goes up for sale, bingo, you can buy it. And that's kind of how so many different ethnicities function in the UK. And I've seen it. Apart from Black Africans, we don't we don't do that. It's like, oh, we may help you admit from an administration perspective, but come and live in our house, save up. No, no, we don't do that. Let me help you set up
True.
it. No, we don't do that. And we have to change because you know if it's I think there's a quote that says that only someone who's really stupid will keep putting the same input and expect the output to
Yes.
be different. If we're going to change the output, the input must be different. And so for me, it was okay, we as a INSEAD African alumni body have existed. I mean, there's a guy there, Robin, and I know you interview him, but he did his MBA the year I was born in 1985. So this group, in one way or another, obviously WhatsApp didn't exist back then. What I'm saying is that people within this network of ours have existed for as long as I've been alive and prior. So in all of that time, what have we been able to achieve by actually bringing our collective talents, gifts, networks, capabilities to the table to share for the benefit of something bigger than ourselves? And so for me, that was really the underlying vision for that. But that only starts when we decide to change our mind. And that's not an easy thing because this is generational. Our parents didn't help each other, our grandparents didn't help each other. It's been sort of, every man, every family for themselves for as long as we can remember. But we can change that if we choose to. And I think that, obviously there's going to be the early adopters, and eventually you'll see, the bell curve, and more people will come on board. You'll certainly see it ramp up. And so I'm very, very grateful for those that have done the introspection and have done the healing and have done the work and are willing to kind of lay the swords, the proverbial swords down, if you will, and say, for the good and the greatness of Africa, I will work with anybody. That person will be my brother, they'll be my sister. And we're not going to talk about, nitpicking, you're from this country, I'm from this country, you're from this tribe, I'm from this tribe. It's no, we are an African collective. And together we're building something that's going to be good and great for our continent.
What you said is very important. And I like the fact that you went straight to the heart of it. The fact that Black people, Sub Saharan Africans, historically, currently, don't work together as we should. And it's held us back for too long. It's held us back for too long. And it's honestly, at this point, it's imperative that if we actually want to progress, we need to
Yes,
move forward. Because it's even as little as the fact that traveling across West Africa can be a pain. I know, but
yes,
I mean, if I was going to travel within Europe, it's so much easier. Even with Brexit, it's still
yes,
easier than
yes,
me traveling
yes,
as a Nigerian who I hold a Nigerian passport and a British passport, and I still find it much harder to travel across Africa
yes,
with my Nigerian passport, which really shouldn't be the case. And so because ease of business, like you said, ease of actually even learning each other's cultures, because it's from, like you said, understanding the core of who they are is how you are able to get them to do anything you want. So can we learn from each other's cultures, families, personalities if we can't even travel and interact as easily as we should? So I mean what you said is, and I for me, and that's one of the things that I could get that from you when we first spoke the first time from iCAN. I'm also deeply passionate. Anyone who knows me knows I wear Africa on my head as I am. I always tell people I'm African first before any other, you know. ethnicity. But to be fair, today I'm still very much I'm just a human being. So not even so much African. I'm just a human being
Yes.
first. I don't really care where you're from, what you
Yes.
do. You bleed like me. We all have just blood running through our veins. We're all on this earth. We don't have any other place
Yes.
we're going to move to. So it's first of all, it's so important that it's so important to care for the next human being, wherever they're from, whatever race, just whatever background they're from. And it's good to know that that's also one of the biggest drivers that you have with regards to to ICANN, but in this context being the African context. And I also love the fact that we're not
Hmm.
making it that it's only Africans for Africa, but it's anyone who wants to build the future of Africa.
Yeah, so as I always say, it's if you live, work,
Yeah.
or love Africa. It's because, and I think that's the thing, right? When we start with these
Mm.
definitions, look, my mom is infinitely more
Mm.
Nigerian than a lot of my friends who are full black Nigerian and grew up in the UK and can't speak a word of their language. She'll sit there and dig into a one on egusi and bitter leaf with her hands, and is quite happy going to a village and sleeping on a mat, you know? And so define African. My mother's white, but she's more African than some black people. In fact, a lot of black people I know. So, we're not
Yeah.
here to define what counts as African. If you live in Africa, if you work in Africa, if you love Africa and you're passionate about building the future of Africa, you are very welcome.
That's what I love about ICANN, because it's very inclusive of who is passionate about Africa. Because I would say this, there are people currently living on the continent who are African or whatever, and they don't care enough about the continent. So I can't really,
100%. They just can't wait to
exactly,
leave.
can't wait to just leave. And in the term we always use, Nigerian term, they keep saying jackpot. So they can't wait to just like abandon everything and just go off.
To an extent, you can't blame them because life
Mhm.
is very, very difficult, right? And when you live under fiscal
Mm,
government oppression, it's
true.
very, very difficult. But I believe that they
Mm.
can be changed. And like I always say, each one change one. And I like to use the analogy of, what does it take for you to be born? You need two parents, you need four grandparents, you need eight great grandparents. I think if you go back like 7 or 8 generations, it's thousands of people. And, you think you're just one person, but actually behind you are generations of people. Now, if you flip that the other way, and if you say, okay, if I could just impact two people, and those people impact two people, in 7 or 8 generations, we're talking thousands of people. And it's easy to get lost in thinking that your life is, it's not enough or that you're not significant enough. But I remember the analogy of the old rotary phones that you have to stick your finger in and turn all the way. And if a phone number has like 13 numbers, it doesn't connect until the 13th number. Okay. Now, you may be person number two, but you have to stick your finger in and you have to engage. You have to do your part, be consistent the whole way until the end, and disengage. If you don't do your part, the connection is never made. But yet, you may not be the person who sees a connection made. But if you have it in your heart to engage and do your part, it's never lost because in the chain of events, it does contribute to the end goal. And I think it's also knowing that we can serve something bigger than ourselves and we don't have to see it in our lifetime. And I think that's also really important. Every little piece, like every tree started with
Yes.
one seed. And if people will keep an eye on the bigger picture, then I think that would really change a lot of mindsets and a lot of behaviors.
Definitely. I believe that this is something that I hope our listeners are taking away because having that mentality of being able to see yourself as part of a connection, like you said, whereby you're just
Mhm.
not looking at it as, oh, it's just me and whatever I do doesn't matter. But what you realize that what you do matters and who you talk to, it could just be a conversation you have or someone you work with or just any, even like you said, your kids, just any connection that you are impacting and you're paying it forward, it would change the way we
Mhm.
interact with people, the way we want to engage with them.
Mm.
And I think that that's one of the biggest takeaways that I really want us to be able to like outside of the many, because I feel like this conversation has so many key takeaways, but for me, that's such an important thing because what we're trying to do here, I can, is to pay it forward, impact, create that within our network. That
Mhm.
it's not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of the continent that we so dearly love and want to see progress.
Yes,
So
the greatness of
I think that will
Africa.
be our motto for moving forward. The ICAN podcast for the good and greatness of Africa.
That's how I always sign out my iCAN emails. If you noticed, I always put at the end because I don't. I know it's much more inspiring than warm
So true,
regards.
actually. You know what? I'm going to definitely look for my own catchy way of signing off emails as well. But I think I'll say I think I can for the good and greatness of Africa. That is spot on. That is very spot on. And moving on from there, one thing I'll keep saying, and anyone who's listening, is how inspirational I found you from day one of speaking with you. And for me, it's so important to for me growing and moving ahead and just in my interactions with people, in what I could learn from them, what I could also potentially give back as well, but mainly because I want to make sure that in moving forward with the I Can podcast, I'm doing justice for what we actually want to put forward as our I Can and within the podcast as well. And for me, it's what would you say you want any listener that tunes in to I Can every 2 weeks, for every episode? What would you say you want them to think of when they think of the I Can podcast? What word would you think? Just one word.
Engine.
So you'll hear it. So engine, and for me, what I understand is literally the driving force.
Yes, we don't need to be seen, but if we're not there, things don't move.
And that is what we will be. We will be the driving force. We will be the engine. And yeah, just I just want coming to the end of this podcast has been such an interesting. I've loved our conversation. Even though we had a little technical bit that, but I want to. The one thing I like to ask our guests, and you will be the first person I will be asking this question, is what at what point, what was it that drove you to believe I can do this? I can achieve this. It could be a word, it could be anything, it could be a story. But what was it? At what point in life, what was it that it made you think I can achieve? I can.
My mom, um, you know, um, a few days ago, our daughter now, she likes to come into my office and she'll knock on the door. She likes has a stylus and she now has her own folder of apps, and ting apps and so on. And Kumon, she'll repeat to work. She'll get on my phone and she'll be doing her maths or English or writing. And she sits next to me and it just dawned on me. And at first, I was just like, "Ugh, I've got meetings or like I've got stuff going on," but I just turned the thing right down. And she doesn't bother me. She just does her work on the side, and I can
Yeah.
get on with what I'm doing. I felt the first time I thought, "Oh, this is going to be a distraction for me." I very very quickly remembered that when I was her age, I did the same thing to my mum, and my mum had a typewriter, old school, and she would be doing her typing. And she got me a slate, so I would write, and then you pull the thing, and it erases it, and you start again. And I would sit next to her, and she never ever treated me as a distraction. It was in our family library. Everybody had a table, including me, barely not a toddler anymore. And every night she'd kiss us goodnight, and then she would go to work, and she would work. And then when I was a teenager and I started doing schoolwork till late in the hours because I'm a night owl, I would be doing it in my room at my desk, and she would be in her office at her desk. And whenever she got up, roughly every hour and a half for a cup of tea, she would come up. She would come into my room. She would take my empty cup. She would go downstairs. She would make the tea. She would bring me back a fresh cup of tea. And she would ask me, "How's it going?" We'd have a little chat for a few minutes. And then she would go back to her work, and I would go back to my work. And, this is a woman who is super academic, super qualified, She just celebrated her 50th wedding anniversary with my father this year. They had 5 children. They lost a child at the age of 7. Now, if we're talking about stuff that a lot of couples don't survive, you know, there's that. And it was their eldest child, their first son. They've gone through a lot. And despite that, she's who taught me what resilience is. Resilience to me is not a word, it's my mom. And I learned what hard work is because hard work to me is my mom. And standing up for people who don't have a voice to speak for themselves or who don't feel like they can. I learned that from her. Being a good wife and a loving mother who nurtures her children and sets them up for success so that they can thrive. I learned that from her. And she's a super careerist, super happily married, pretty much super mom. Yeah, she's not perfect, but she's as close as it gets. And when I was doing my EMBA, boy, there were some nights where I was just sitting there crying. Like, I'm tired, hearing my husband and children snore. It's 2, 3 a.m. I've got to be, working. Yeah, I've got this at 7, but I've got this assignment due. And, I'm like just crushed with fatigue. And I would ping her, I'd be like, Mom, are you awake? And she'd be like, Yeah, I'm still awake. And so she'd go and get a cup of tea. And, I would get a tea, she would get a tea, and we'd sit there on WhatsApp and I would just cry it out. And I'd just be like, Mom, I'm tired. And she's just like, Okay, maybe tonight you just go to bed because you need to reset. And then tomorrow it's a brand new day. And it's that holding space, it's that giving you permission to be human. And I would go to sleep, and boy, I would enjoy those 4 hours. And then, like, the next day, I woke up with a spring in my step, not because I had a huge amount of sleep, but because I had someone who held the space, who I knew had been trodden that path before, doing kind of, senior qualifications whilst having raising a young family. And also her choice of husband massively informed my own choice of husband. Because it's not every kind of guy that can be married to a high performing woman, let's be honest. Um, and it takes someone who is deeply secure and isn't trying to play, machismo or ego games, but knows how to oscillate, leading from the front, leading from the back, and doesn't feel emasculated because their woman is
Yeah.
out there crushing it, doing all this public speaking and stuff, because they know that when she comes home, it's the two of you, you're a team, and you play complementary roles to one another. And also, seeing my mom never hold, her successes against my father because they seemed to the outside world more fantastic than his or anything like that. Honestly, I think for me, the person who makes me feel like I can take on the world is my mom because I've seen her do it. And whenever I get tired, I think she got tired too and she slept. And then the next day she just got up and crushed it again. Um, and it's okay to be human, but as long as you, like people say, representation matters. And when you see someone doing something, you're like, if you can do it,
Yeah.
I can do it. And that's really important. And so for me now, I live my life more publicly than I probably would have preferred, but because it's important for other women, younger women who are coming up, to think, if she can do it, if she can parent out loud, if she can parent an autistic child out loud, if she can do that and be the CEO of this and a leader of iCAN and do this and do that, you know, like, I'm not some special alien with endowed powers. I'm just a human being, who's kind of mid to sort of decent level intelligence. And if I can do it with the right support network, then other people too can too. And it's important, to show that it's possible so that other women especially feel empowered to do that.
What you've said is so key because when you say mothers and the impact of mothers, as you were talking, and I could just hear it from your voice and just know that your mom is, like you said, if when you think of I can achieve this, you think your mom, you think because she's done it, I can do it. And one thing I'm also looking for is how you're paying it forward too, because your daughter would look back and think, I can do it too, because my mom did it. So it's that,
Yes.
it's a form of,
Yes.
I'll use the word generational wealth from mother to daughter
Yes.
constantly. And
Yes.
honestly,
Yes.
it was just obviously I don't want to talk too much about myself, but it's so similar because when I think about resilience, I think about my mom as well, and what my
Mhm.
grandmother, her mom, just that paying forward,
Yes.
coming from a family of women who are high performing women as well, who actually just push forward nevertheless. It's just good to see that we are products of women who just decided not to give up. You are definitely one of, I hope to, I will look forward to speaking to you again. So, listeners, she will be back at some point in time. You don't know when, but she will be back. It will be a surprise to everyone, but not a surprise to Isabel or myself. But yeah, it's honestly been it's been so, so good speaking with you. I feel inspired because for me, it's one of the things that I love speaking to inspirational women. I love speaking to women who are living their purpose and who are living it loud, living it happily, living it because there's so much when you think about women, like, when you think about the stereotypes around high power women who are working to achieve, there's so many stereotypes, but it's good for anyone who's listening that you can achieve. First of all, have that support system in marriage, in family,
It's
everything is achievable. And it's not bad.
it's not
Exactly.
binary.
Mm.
If you desire to have a life partner, and if you desire to have children, and if you desire to
Exactly.
thrive in your career, and it is possible. I just think it's about finding what work life
Exactly.
harmony means for you and how you can harmonize across all the slices of your Terry's chocolate orange.
Is that your favorite type of chocolate? First of all, that's the question. Do you have a favorite
Do you
chocolate?
know? Yeah, I do. I do. And I don't even think it counts as real chocolate. It's
No, it
Raffaello, the Ferrero coconut. I think it probably has like 2%
is.
chocolate in it. But whatever it's got in it, it tastes very good, which is why I don't buy it, because I'm watching my height.
Actually such a fun statement to me. I watch you buy. That's a good one. Uh, but yeah,
Uh,
honestly, no, my rule is even if it's got 0.00001% of chocolate, it's chocolate. So it's chocolate in my books. And but yeah, honestly, it's been so great speaking with you. And I hope our listeners have
Likewise.
enjoyed.
Thank you,
Thank you
Vanessa.
for coming speaking with me as well. And I look forward to achieving with you, working with you to achieve iCAN's purpose, actually, being the engine that we want to be, the the driving force to actually push forward what we want to see. Might not happen in our lifetime, but at least we're pushing it forward. That is
Mhm.
something that I look forward to working with you, working hard, working smart, working across board, and working happily with passion to achieve and
Yes.
to realize as much as we can see in our lifetime the growth and the progress we
Yes.
want to see within Africa. And working with everyone who loves Africa.
Yes.
We're all welcome. Everyone's
Yes.
welcome.
Yes. We've still got a few
Yes.
decades, so I'm sure that we can achieve a few things in that time.
Everyone's welcome. We're not mean girls. Everyone's welcome to our table. Come, the more the merrier.
Very much so. There's plenty of space at the table. So yeah, I think if you're listening, and look, even if you're not an INSEAD alumni, we would still love to speak with you. And if you're someone who's really passionate about building the future of Africa and not leaving things the same way you saw them and you found them, then please do get in touch with us. We'd be really thrilled to hear from you and connect with you.
Thank you so much. And details on how to contact us will be left in the notes for the podcast. And yes, so please, please, please contact us. Anyone, INSEAD, non-INSEAD, even if you never went to business school, whatever, even if you went to university, just whoever you are that really is very passionate about impacting. We want to work with you. We are driven people, and thank you again, Isabel. Thank you for listening. Thanks to our listeners,
Thank you.
and yeah, see you until our next episode. We are working to build Africa. What's the tagline again? For the
The
good and
good
greatness
and
of Africa.
greatness of
So I will not
Africa.
forget that. I will be ending each for the good and greatness of Africa. So thank
Yes, and also don't forget to tell them to share, like, subscribe,
yes.
and
Yes,
all
so
that
I'll
good
put that
stuff.
in now. Yeah, you've done that for me, but moving forward, I'll definitely say that. But yeah, please remember to share, like, and subscribe on all platforms that we are on. That would be Instagram, please share us on LinkedIn and Instagram. And we will be there on YouTube as well. So thank you all for listening to our next episode. Bye.